Okay. Hi there and welcome to Best Weight. My name's Erin Harleton. I'm a registered dietitian.
And I'm Michael Lincoln. I'm also a registered dietitian. Both Aaron and I work for Thames Valley Family Health Team. We are very happy that you're joining us today. And just as a reminder that there are resources associated with this presentation that you should be able to access either right off the Thames Valley website for programs for Best Weight, and or they may be attached to an email that you received earlier.
Perfect. And without further delay, let's move into our session today. Okay, so we are going to start by flipping quickly through this initial slide, which is the disclaimer. So wanted to lay out our intentions with this class, which is to discuss healthy eating and lifestyle habits and not dieting. So if you're currently struggling with disordered eating and or challenges with body image, please reach out to your local healthcare provider for extra support. So that's not the intention of the class today. Moving on. We're just going to talk quickly here about the outline for today. So first of all, we are going to discuss what impacts weight. So those are the different aspects in our life, in our lifestyle that might actually be behind your weight. Then we're going to talk about some health behaviors, including diet and exercise. After that, we're going to move into some medications that have either been around for a while or some newer medications as well, related to weight right now, and also for surgery options. And finally, we'll just sort of take it all into one big package and tie it up with a neat little bow with a summary and possibly some next steps that you might want to look at. So, in terms of how our world has changed over the last number of years, we put together this slide just to show the contrast. For those of us who have grown up sort of like, 70s, 80s, and beyond, there has been a massive change in the environment that we live in. The pictures to the left of the screen, we're going to see the top left-hand picture is a picture of downtown London, Ontario, from 1987. And as we can see here, there's not really a whole lot going down in the way of restaurants or food. We've got movie theaters, we can see the entrance to a mall. I think if we look really carefully, we can sort of see some other kind of retail stores, but there's no food places or restaurants that we can see on this very main intersection of London, Ontario. In the image just below that, so the left bottom, we can see that it's taken from the inside of a restaurant that would be commonly seen in the 1970s. And I just want to point out that this was the norm back then. If you were going to a restaurant, you were going to a restaurant where you sat down across the table from someone else, enjoyed some conversation, and you treated yourself to a meal together. Switching over to modern day, we can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the top right, this is kind of a view of a sort of, I would say, a not downtown, but kind of like leading into a town of a city. And this is American. We see some chains here that we don't have in Canada. But certainly we can kind of get that image of just how many different options we can see, even within a very short stretch of highway, and that really is the norm nowadays. We can also see down at the bottom right-hand side of the screen that there's a lot of options when we're driving to pull off the highway and eat. It's kind of all around us. And if we were to have another picture of that downtown London intersection, we could see that there are a lot more options of food. We definitely see the presence of some of the coffee shops that we are so familiar with, and many others. So we also wanted to mention that there is a lot more opportunity for people to just pick up a phone and not even have to move at all, and have food delivered to us. So those food delivery options certainly present an even bigger challenge for those of us who want to put some space between us and kind of the impulse of eating. So moving on to some other factors that impact our body weight. The first one here, we're going to see on the left-hand side of the screen, we're going to talk about genetics. So Our weight is largely due to our genetics. The estimates right now range from anywhere from 25 to 80% of who we are in our bodies is sort of predisposed from our genetics. So it's interesting when I'm speaking with people in my office, I always ask them to tell me about when they're at a family reunion and they look around, what do they see? What types of bodies are around them? And can you identify with those different types of bodies? Can you see trends in your family and where those genes have been passed along? And I have never had anybody say, no, I don't identify with anyone in my family. It's usually somebody. It's my, yes, my grandma and my aunts or my mother, or my father's side of the family, or something like that. So it's really interesting how we can actually see that. Um, Also wanted to mention that although our genetics sort of predispose us to the type of body that we have, also weight fluctuations through time and age are very normal. So it's very normal to gain weight and for our bodies to change as we age. And we also will change in body composition. So our bodies will kind of reconfigure to have a little bit more fat and a little less muscle as we age. And that's a very normal pattern of aging for us. It doesn't necessarily have to be unhealthy as long as we are still following through on our healthy behaviors. Um, Medications on the right-hand side, another big factor impacting our body weight. So some medications do affect our weight, causing us either to lose or gain weight. If you are on medication and this is a suspicion of yours or a concern, certainly a great person to ask is your doctor, your nurse practitioner, or your pharmacist, who could review your medications just to see if there's any side effects that are related to weight in your own situation. Other things that impact our body weight. So let's talk about sleep. Lack of sleep can lead to a whole sort of cascade of things that impact our body weight down the road. So, for example, when we don't get enough sleep, and this is even one night of poor sleep, and we're not even talking about subsequent nights, but certainly who can't identify with the fact that we got a new puppy or we had a new baby or there's a lot of stress or there's something disrupting our sleep for several nights in a row, sometimes several years in a row. And when we don't get enough sleep, our bodies actually change the different levels of hormones that are circulating in our brains and in our bodies. And these hormones will actually have a way that they can increase our hunger signals in our body and also decrease our fullness signals. So, who can identify with after a poor night's sleep, just noticing that you just feel hungry all the time, or you just are, snacky all the time, or nothing's really satisfying. You need more, you need more, you need more. So, that's a factor of lack of sleep and these hunger and fullness hormones that are kind of running along in different amounts in your body because of the lack of sleep. Also, lack of sleep causes us to feel tired. And when we're feeling tired, we're moving less. We don't want to go to the gym. I know I should be walking after supper, but I just don't have the energy to do that. It also kind of disrupts our energy that we have to even do things like planning and prepping meals. So we are far more likely to dial that number on the phone for food delivery or just do a drive-through or takeout. On the right-hand side of the screen, we are going to now talk about stress, which is another major factor that may be impacting your body's weight. So this is a nice little infographic that we found on the internet, which we just absolutely loved. 5 different ways that stress might be impacting your body's weight. So the first one is that stress actually intensifies our hunger and our cravings. Stress also slows down our metabolism by suppressing our thyroid hormone production. So we actually turn that dial down. We burn less calories, we burn less energy. It drains our energy so that we're too tired to work out. So we spoke about that a little bit already. And it interferes with our sleep. It also makes it difficult to keep long term goals in the front of our mind. So if we are stressed out, it's almost like the analogy of the bucket where we have so much capacity in the morning or so much energy, and if we have and that energy is limited, so that bucket, our capacity in our bucket is limited, and some days we have a big bucket and some days we have a small bucket. But when we are stressed, when we're chronically stressed, when we have stress all the time in our life, what tends to happen is that our bucket empties out dealing with these stressful situations really quickly. And then we just have nothing left at the end of the day or even by lunch to make a decision to take part in a balanced meal or plan a balanced meal, do our grocery shopping, do our prepping, do putting meals together, cleaning up and things like that. So eating healthy is one of the first things to go when we are under this chronic stress and our kind of bucket is emptied. Our bucket capacity is lower and it's emptied much quicker. So what else impacts our body weight? Our hunger and our appetite. So body hunger is our drive to eat when we feel physically hungry, which is can be sort of a grumbling in your stomach. It can be a headache. It can feel like low energy. Sometimes it can feel like hunger or anger or change in mood. It can feel like sleepiness or being tired. Reward hunger is ruled by our brain, and it includes emotional stress and mindless eating. So it's quite different from body hunger. When our reward hunger drive is in charge, we look for foods that give us pleasure. It tends to mean we are choosing foods that are higher in sugar, fat, and salt, and with certain textures that give us pleasure, like creamy or crunchy. So these are a couple of different also things that will impact our body weight. If we are living in the reward hunger world much more than the body hunger world, there's plenty of options and opportunities through the day that we might be satisfying or wanting to satisfy that reward hunger without actually being hungry. And weeks or months or years of this will add up to possibly a change in your body weight. So we wanted to mention that as well. There's a really great video that's available on YouTube. It's about 10 or so minutes long called The Gatekeeper, the Go-Getter, and the Sleepy Executive, which just summarizes the different types of hunger. Okay, let's talk about BMI. So BMI was based on the height and weight of white European men, and it did not take into account women, Black, Indigenous, or other groups. BMI was a tool that was developed for a different reason, and it was never intended to be judged, to be used to judge health. So, for example, we can't always necessarily connect a BMI number with health risks. So, that idea in healthcare has been quite challenged and quite dispelled over the last number of years. So I'll say that again. We can't always associate a BMI number with a health outcome or a health status. So when we looked at the measurements of BMI, where we say someone is normal body weight or overweight or obese, that doesn't necessarily mean they're at a higher or lower risk for health problems. It's not that number of BMI we're looking at. It's health behaviors that tend to make us more or less healthy. So if we're not talking about BMI as a measurement of health, what can we use to measure our health? Well, we can ask ourselves, how do I feel? Is my energy good on a day-to-day basis? Or I just feel exhausted all the time, like I just want to go to bed. I just want to take multiple naps and I'm never feeling quite energetic and rested. How are my labs? So when's the last time you had your blood drawn and what do your labs look like? So how is your cholesterol? What about your blood sugars? How's your blood pressure doing? You can ask yourself, am I getting enjoyable activity every day in my life? And how do I feel when I'm moving? And how's my mood? And how well am I sleeping? So all of these questions you can ask yourself are better measurements of your health than the BMI. There is a topic called weight stigma that we wanted to address in this presentation because a lot of people can identify with this based on their own personal experiences. So weight stigma is the belief that large bodies need to be smaller. Weight stigma has many harmful effects and can lead people to practice unhealthy behaviors to lose weight, such as weight cycling or yo-yo dieting, which leads to a higher risk for health problems. Weight stigma also leads to body dissatisfaction, depression and anxiety, and chronic disease. And we would like to just point out that there's an excellent video on YouTube called Poodle Science that if you're interested in learning more about weight stigma, It's an even shorter video and it's very cute. So worth checking out for sure. Okay, so this slide here, we're just going to talk about what are the expectations of weight loss with health behaviors alone. So if we look at the graph on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see that the blue line here shows us that uh, the expectation of weight loss, where at the beginning when we're starting a new behavior, so perhaps we've changed a little bit of our eating habits or we're moving more, we can see that the weight comes off nicely at the beginning and then we tend to plateau. Now oftentimes our body decides what weight it wants to be at, not our brains. So in our minds we might have a target weight, but our bodies don't necessarily agree with that. So our bodies will stop the weight loss above where we think the weight loss should be. And we consider that our best weight. So our bodies know where they are healthy when we have health behaviors going in the background. Now, on the green line, we can also see that the patient important health and wellness outcomes continue to improve even after our weight has plateaued. So I'll say that again. With weight loss, even after our weight loss has plateaued, if we continue to maintain our healthy behaviors and the scale doesn't move, it doesn't matter. We can continue to improve our health outcomes. So we can continue to still see improvements in our blood pressure, our cholesterol, our blood sugar, etc. The typical sustainable weight loss with diet and exercise is between 3 and 5%. So what does that mean? Well, if a person weighs 200 pounds, they may maintain a loss of 6 to 10 pounds. Improvements in health can happen without a big change in body size. So just remember that a lot of the media will show us images and give us false hope about losing tons and tons of weight very quickly and keeping it off over time. But it's just not what the studies show us. The studies do definitely show us that the people who lose weight, it's a much smaller amount when we are using lifestyle behaviors. But the health outcomes, if we can sustain that small amount of weight loss, are very, very important and they're long lasting as long as we keep those behaviors going. Let's talk about what happens when we start to lose weight and why maybe our expectation of larger amounts of weight loss just doesn't match up with what actually happens. So our body starts making changes for our survival. For every 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds of fat tissue loss, the body burns 25 calories less and increases hunger by 100 calories. So that's for every 1 kilogram less. So you can imagine if you've gone on an aggressive diet and have lost 10 kilograms, how much more we're driven toward food. We get less full with the same amount of food, so our fullness hormone is turned down. We don't have control over how much fat versus how much muscle we lose in the weight loss journey. So we may be losing, although the scale is continuing to move down, much of that may be muscle, which is not an advantage to our health or to our long-term ability to keep that weight off. So exercise and having enough protein helps us keep more muscle as we lose weight. Some facts about dieting and intentional weight loss. 95% of those who lose weight from dieting will regain it. So I always love to put out the analogy of if a doctor told you that your medication was 95% likely to fail, would you take that medication? Probably not. So why do we keep believing those false promises of diets and weight loss? Weight cycling or a yo-yo effect. So many of us who have struggled with weight for our whole lives can identify with that quick weight loss and then the plateau and then the weight regain and then the guilt and the shame and the quick weight loss and then the plateau and the weight regain. That's called the yo-yo effect. Dieting may also result in increased risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, reduced metabolism, weight gain, and eating disorders. Some mental health effects of weight loss, we have increased guilt and shame, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and low self-esteem, again, that accompany the yo-yo dieting or the inability to keep the weight off and the regain. Other health consequences, avoiding medical care, poor sleep, and digestion issues. So let's use best weight. Best weight is the weight that a person can achieve and maintain while living their healthiest and happiest lives. And best weight may not necessarily be the weight that you have in your mind of where you want to be and what your target might be.
Thanks, Aaron. So now we'd like to go over some fundamental health behaviors relative to eating well and trying to establish best weight. So one of the first things we'd want to kind of go over is balancing your plate. What does healthy eating, balanced eating sort of mean? Now, what's in front of you here is the latest Canada's Food Guide, which is a plate pattern, a pattern way of eating to try to follow. Now, what's on this plate may not necessarily line up with the sort of foods that you eat. This is more of a Western European style as far as the foods involved here. So, depending on your traditions and culture, you may not eat this particular way, and that's okay. Canada's Food Guide has alternate versions of this plate pattern, also in different languages that may be more suited to the way you eat. So, if that sounds like you, then you should be able to follow the link to the alternate food guides as part of the resource or resources provided for this presentation. But ultimately, you want to think about color and the use of whole foods more so than processed foods. And the plate pattern really tries to also emphasize the importance of relative balance. So if we take a look at the plate itself, top right says eat protein foods. Definitely would emphasize that you want to include protein at every meal. So protein foods could involve animal proteins, hopefully lean choices in this category, but beef, pork, goat, lamb, could be poultry like chicken, turkey, could be fish or seafood or eggs. Those animal proteins. Now, that's not the only set of proteins out there, certainly. There's dried beans, peas, and lentils. There's nuts and seeds or their butters. There's also tofu. Also in the dairy category, if you consume dairy, excellent sources of protein would be hard cheese, hopefully lower fat, Greek or Icelandic skyr type yogurts, and cottage cheese. So there's no shortage of protein options. So want to make sure you get protein as part of every meal, but only a quarter of what you're about to eat, as far as relative balance, is hopefully coming from some sort of protein source. Down below, you can see it says choose whole grain foods. So if you consume things like pasta, rice, couscous, quinoa, breads, rolls, buns, naan, pita, tortilla, hot cereal, cold cereal, crackers, those are all grainy type foods. And the hope is you would preferentially choose whole grain foods more often than, let's say, white or whole wheat options. Hopefully, at least half of the choices coming home or that you're consuming would be whole grain versions of those foods. That helps ensure you're getting some fiber in your diet. But only a quarter of what you're eating in the moment should be sort of coming from those sorts of foods. And on the left-hand side, you can see half your plate would hopefully be vegetables or fruits. So if it's vegetables, whether it's raw, as salad, boiled, steamed, roasted, grilled, whatever you like, try to get that involved. And the relative balance would be, again, half of what you're eating for lunch or supper would be that. And make water your drink of choice. We'll talk about fluids on the next slide. But, that's just talking about your plate now and the relative balance, but also the size of the plate could matter. So if you already eat on a luncheon plate, which is a middle plate in your plate set, great, keep doing that. If you tend to eat on a dinner plate, you may want to trial eating on a luncheon plate, see how it goes with plating your first plate like this example here with the foods that you like and tolerate. And if you're still hungry, then go back and get seconds, but would certainly encourage you to get seconds from the left side of the plate. So either more of the veggies that you just enjoyed, or maybe have a piece of fruit to close the meal. So eat to satisfaction. Try not to eat until you're full or overfull. And this is where mindful eating comes in. Try to eat at a table, or certainly without distraction, but better to eat at a table than in front of the TV. And if you're at a table, hopefully no phones, tablets, computers, things to distract you. And if something like this isn't the way you eat, but you think it might be a way you want to go, then consider placing a copy of this right at the table in front of where you eat as a quick reference. And after a while, with some practice, you may find you don't need the plate pattern as a reference anymore because it's kind of locked in as a change for you. So let's talk about fluids. So, in general, the phrase I usually encourage people to consider is avoid drinking your energy. So, there's a lot of ways to get calories and energy in our day. But for most of us, I would encourage you'd want to eat your energy and nutrition more so than drink it. So this is what you see here is a variety of drink options that can be considerable sources of sugar, but also there are drink options out there that are significant sources of fat and sugar. So bottom line is try to avoid drinking your calories. Non-caloric water would be hopefully a primary fluid choice for you, or clear tea, clear coffee, things like that, things that are near zero. And that's not the only aspect of fluids that can be important as well. Another key thing to be mindful of is just make sure you get enough fluids. So unless you're on a fluid restriction for some reason, um, males are encouraged to get 3 liters per day. So that's 12 cups of fluids. And what counts as fluids? Water, tea, coffee, juice, pop, milk, all count as fluids. Um, and for female, it would be 2 to 2 1/4. So 8 to 9 cups, pretty much 9 cups a day. So just be mindful of that. And there's a good reason for that. Your body relies on fluids for a whole host of bodily functions, but also when it comes to eating, you may end up feeling hungry when really you're just perhaps misinterpreting thirst. So, this may not line up with you, but let's walk through a typical workday for Mrs. A. Um, so, Mrs. A, she's in a rush to get to work, only fills up on coffee to get her day started, not particularly hungry in the morning, trying to save her calories for later in the day for all those usual reasons. May get a bit anxious and jittery as the morning goes on, but gets to lunch, has a low carb lunch, so maybe chicken and salad, trying to be good. But then as the afternoon goes on, too busy to involve a snack, energy may be lagging as the day drags on, but she's done her workday, and let's say there's 6 or so hours between lunch and supper. She hasn't had a snack, and then when she approaches that supper meal, very high chance that her appetite is going to be not very well managed or controlled. If you've ever heard the term hangry, that's where somebody is really on the starved or ravenous side of the hunger scale. And maybe blood sugars could be dropping. She might find herself, preloading and eating as soon as she got from home, or maybe eating as she's cooking or preparing her meal. And by the time the meal time hits, she may be having larger servings or multiple helpings, and may possibly be eating until she's overfull thereafter. And may even the lingering effects might be even after that big meal, still may be having snacks in the evening, even though she's not particularly eating because she's hungry. Um, it may feel like today's already been ruined, so I'll just start tomorrow. But the cycle may just continue. So, appetite control would be something to be very attentive to in how that's managed for you. It only takes a couple seconds to ask yourself before bite one of anything, meal or snack, could I wait 10 or 15 more minutes for this? And if the answer is yeah, it's a super time to eat. So you can be proactive, hopefully, mindful and modest with what you're about to do, as opposed to being reactive and maybe not in the driver's seat. If somebody's too eager to eat at any given time, there's usually 3 things that might go sideways for you. One would be the food choices may not be so great in the moment because you're desperate. But even if the food fairy came by and said, "Poof, here I am. here's this wonderful spread of healthy, delicious food. You don't have to lift a finger. It's all everything that you would want to eat and you like. Great. But portion control then would be pretty hard to manage. You're going to tend to likely pile it on a little bit more because your eyes are big. And the speed at which you eat may increase. So that might lead to kind of wolfing your food down and possibly over consuming before you got the signal that, hey, I've already had enough. It could be too late. So if that ever happens to you, you can seek patterns to see if it does happen to you, because there may be certain times of the week or certain times of the day that this happens. And just ask yourself, am I eating with some regularity, unlike Mrs. A here? When I do eat, am I kind of striving and am I pulling off balanced meals or snacks? Kind of like what we talked about before with that plate pattern. If the answer is no, that might be part of your solution because a balanced meal should involve protein and foods with fiber, both of which tend to prolong our appetite or our satiety. And also, you could also be paying attention to your fluid volume. If I haven't drank since this morning, maybe I'm really just misinterpreting thirst as hunger in the moment. So here's just a sample of a balanced diet to give you energy all day. So getting back to that regularity, well, you can see there's a breakfast, there's a lunch, there's a supper. In this case, there's an afternoon and an evening snack. So maybe the distance for that person between lunch and supper is the greatest in their day, and they benefit from that afternoon snack. So when they get home, they don't end up getting starved or ravenous or hangry, like we mentioned. Um, so that's good cause to have those. And consistent intake in that day is going to help with also hopefully being mindful and modest with what that future meal or snack is going to look like. With that, uh, you may notice that these examples they're balanced. They involve protein as well as some fiber choices, either from whole grain foods or fruits and vegetables. And again, kind of like an insurance policy that as I go into my day, chances are if I eat with these balanced meals and snacks and with this spacing, I'm going to have much better control of my appetite, or certainly a better chance of achieving that. So that when I'm eating again, I'm calm, cool, collected, and I can be proactive and modest and mindful with what I'm about to eat or with what I'm about to do versus reactive. Now, meal planning. I love talking about meal planning because it's one of the biggest gaps that people tend to have when they're trying to make changes dietary wise. And nobody's diet is going to change without meal planning because it involves what you're consuming and also how it's secured. So, uh, I would suggest meal planning's job is simply to try to achieve the right food at the right place at the right time. And that's it. It takes some forethought and takes some effort. Nobody has to necessarily map out a whole week's worth of meals, like point one here, where it says map out your meals. I mean, if you can do a whole week, super duper, but that might be a little bit of a lofty task for someone. I would suggest just try to start with just thinking about tomorrow today. And it might only be one meal that you think you might struggle with the most. Maybe it's work lunches. I never planned out work lunches, kind of leave the house with nothing, and then I'm maybe skipping it or dining out at a local restaurant. Or it could be that supper meal that's shared with others. That might be a focal point and a good place to start. But getting started with some forethought as to mapping out your meals, maybe at least a day ahead, is a good start. And meal planning is also a team sport. So if you live with somebody, chances are they're going to influence your diet. So if you live with someone, try to get them engaged in this and work together as a team um, with meal planning. Makes it a lot easier if you can do that. Balance, well, balance is going back to referencing that plate pattern. Just eating one thing is not a balanced meal. So try to strive that plate pattern as close as you can. Never asking anybody to be perfect, but if 70, 80% of your meals could fall in line with that plate pattern, might be doing better than where you are now. Variety, it says, is the next point there. So not just protein foods, but try to vary your foods up. Protein could be veggies and fruits that you may want to vary as well, just so you get a broader chance of getting the nutrients you would need in a day. List. So make a grocery list. Try not to go to the grocery with nothing in mind. You may be subject to impulse buys, or you may end up coming home and forgetting the one or two things that you really wanted to get and need. So make a list, and that could be a team sport too. Other people in the house may be contributing to the list, so you're getting the right food at the right place at the right time again. And would certainly encourage you to love your leftovers. One of my favorite sayings for meal planning is cook once, eat twice, or more. So bulk cooking, making more than you need with purpose. So maybe I'm going to freeze half of a batch of something that I made on the weekend. Maybe I'm going to make a bit of protein. So the next 2, 3 days, I've got myself covered to use that protein as part of my work lunches, let's say in future days. Leftovers are a great strategy to use because what you're trying to ultimately achieve is making healthy easier to pull off. Um, you don't want it to be a burden. You want to make it easy. So it's all about lowering barriers to getting to healthier eating. And it's going to involve some planning because it's not just going to magically happen. So, like I said, try to find maybe one meal in your day that you might want to work on, connect with others in the house if you have that. Try to take it on as a team sport so it's not all up to you necessarily. And a little bit of planning can go a long way as far as improving healthy eating patterns. And eating is more than just food. So healthy eating is not restrictive. It's not kind of the best weight approach. Um, so when you eat, remember food's powerful. Food can be used for comfort. Food is good for connecting with other people. It's not just about providing ourselves nutrients and energy. So be mindful when you eat, if you can. Like I mentioned before, that's going to be promoted if you can eat at a set place where you don't have distractions. Cook at home more, if possible. Using the skills you have. Nobody's got to be a 5-star Michelin chef to put simple, balanced meals together. So try to cook at home from simple ingredients, whole foods that you've secured from the grocery store or market, and try to put those together in a meaningful way for yourself that you like versus prepackaged, processed, ultra processed foods or dining away from home. So takeout, delivery, eating at a restaurant as much as possible. Save those as treats, not treatments. Take time to enjoy your food. So again, if you can eat mindfully and slowly, connect with others, great. Versus eating in your car as you drive or eating over the sink when you get home. Try to take the time to enjoy what's going on. Food should be a powerful part of that. Eat meals with others, like I mentioned, the social aspect. If you don't have anybody in your household to eat with, then maybe on occasion you connect with friends or family or neighbors and see what you can do there. Reconnect to the eating experience as far as your cultural and food experience or food traditions. Maybe dive into that a little bit more if you can as you progress with healthier eating. Now we're going to change gears to how are we moving our bodies. Now, right off the bat, I need to mention that um, our scope as dietitians does not cover physical activity. So this is not part of our scope. We are just giving you or providing you what the current recommendations for Canadians as far as activity and sedentary behavior is. So we're not kind of speaking from a dietitian lens. This is just a general health practitioner lens. So the physical activity guidelines should be in your resource pack, but just to touch on these briefly, there's different ways to get the body moving, and one you could call exercise. And there are certainly activity targets for Canadians. So for aerobic activity, which is the kind of activity that's going to get your heart, your lungs, your muscles working in concert, the target is 150 minutes of accumulated aerobic activity, at least at a moderate level, and we'll talk about that in a second, in a week's time. So you want to be active most days, but you don't have to be active every day. And the guidance would be you need to do it for at least 10 minutes for it to count. So consider that. Now, beyond the aerobic type activities, it's important to test our body's muscles and bones using strength, resistance, or weight bearing type activities at least twice a week. So, um, That is going to help maintain or possibly build muscle mass, as well as test our bones, which is good for maintaining our bone health. And breaking up activity into multiple intervals is better than just one prolonged bout. So you don't want to say, I'm going to do 2 hours of moderate aerobic activity, and then almost the full rest of the week, I'm just going to take off. Again, you want to be active most days. You don't have to be active every day. There's metabolic benefits to being active throughout your week, and that includes things like improving blood sugar control. So, exercise examples, light intensity could be just simply standing, walking at a normal pace, being in the kitchen, putting that next meal together, cooking, light gardening. Moderate intensity, well, jogging, skating, some more intense housework, maybe like vacuuming, brisk wheeling, walking, could be a little bit more intense gardening, like lugging soil around or mulch. Vigorous intensity, you don't have to necessarily get to this level, but vigorous would be if you're a runner, playing soccer, hockey, um, cycling, again, wheelchair sports. As far as strength activities, there's all different kinds of options here, and it doesn't have to be hitting the gym and doing weights, but carrying children, doing calisthenics like squats, push-ups, actually doing weights, whether it's dumbbells or barbells or machines, resistance bands can be very handy for some. And activities in water, usually water itself offers resistance. So swimming, water aerobics could be things that might just help with strength and resistance training. Once we're 65 and older, there's an additional consideration too, and that would be involving some balance activities in your week. So, examples: yoga, Tai Chi, getting up and down from a chair without arms. That's important because as we age, you want to minimize your risk for a fall, and you want to be good on your feet. So, balance activities can help make sure you're good on your feet, and you're not gonna possibly break a hip or something like that. And as far as exercise and really all moving the body uh, forms go, try to get away from the concept that it's all about burning calories. I'm being active because I want to burn calories. We would want you to be active in a joyful way that you would like, puts a smile on your face, um, and not it being about burning energy or burning calories. Outside of the metabolic benefits of exercise, which could be helping to improve and control blood sugar, blood pressure, blood cholesterol. For other things that people get with routine exercise or physical activity would be improved sleep quality, improved stress management, improved mood, and improved or increased sense of energy or lack of fatigue. So if that sounds like something you want to have, then considering getting more active could be something to pursue. Now, exercise isn't the whole part of getting our bodies moving, however. We also, outside of exercise and those guidelines, we also want to consider how much do we sit and consume screen time. So, how often are we sitting or laying down? Because prolonged periods of sitting and laying down are not healthy. Even if somebody got the 150 minutes of aerobic activity and a couple bouts of weight bearing and resistance activity in their week, that's all well and good, but that's a small percentage of your whole week. So if the rest of the time that person is just sitting, laying down, watching TV or whatever, or gaming, that's not going to be overall healthy. So exercise is one part of it. The other part is minimizing sedentary behavior. So hopefully you spend less than 8 hours of your day sitting or laying down. So whether that's leisure activities or the kind of work you do, you want to minimize that. When it comes to leisure or fun screen time in your day, TV, tablet, phones, gaming, hopefully limit that to 3 hours. We have the sentiment for trying to limit screen time for kids. That applies to adults as well. And break up your sitting. So if you have a sedentary job or you're just sedentary for hours, possibly at home, try to stand at least every hour if you can. Take a break from whatever you're doing, stand up for a bit, do something, then come back and do continue what you were doing. So you do not want to sit for prolonged periods of time nor lay down. Now, Aaron mentioned these before as some contributors or constraints relative to weight management. So ask yourself, how's my sleep? Am I getting 7 to 8 hours of restful sleep? I'm not snoring. I don't, have to get up multiple times and have fragmented sleep. Am I getting restful sleep? So, duration is one consideration, but I think the be all end all would be when you get up, do you typically feel rested and refreshed when you awake? If the answer is yes, super duper, you get good sleep. If the answer is no, whether you got 4 hours or 400 hours in bed, you didn't achieve restful sleep. So that's going to be a challenge. Uh, Sleep can be a challenge because if you have poor sleep, well, it can change your eating behaviors, as Aaron mentioned before. But it may be not great for your energy level that day. So maybe you don't want to be active because you haven't got fuel in the tank. Maybe your motivation to take on a goal you have or some health behavior change isn't going to get any traction that day because it's an off day. You just aren't motivated because you're tired. Now, in the resources, there should be a handout you could look at for sleep hygiene guidance called Guidelines for Better Sleep. You could also look at our Thames Valley Family Health Team programs tab on our website and look for a group called Dream On. That would be free to you, a one-time session that might help give you some tips, tools, strategies to try to eke out better sleep consistently. But just ask yourself if you have poor sleep and anything you've been trying to do or do in the future just isn't getting you there, then I would encourage you to talk to your doctor or nurse practitioner if the problem persists, because you really do want to achieve good sleep. And as far as stress goes, well, stress, as Aaron mentioned, isn't going to be great for health behavior changes. So leverage the stress management and coping skills you already have. Try to apply those. If you're not too sure if other ones are out there that maybe you could benefit from, Thames Valley also has some programs related to um, stress management you could look at, again, free to you. You could look at Bounce Back Ontario as an option and look that up. As I mentioned before, just when we're talking about exercise, exercise is a great way for many people to help minimize or manage their stress or anxiety. Or you may want to pursue social connections and supports, friends, family, faith, whatever might help you manage the stress would be beneficial. So let's get into talking about medications briefly. So, our emphasis is on health behaviors, the ones that I just went over. If that is, falls short, or you're interested in other things that may help with weight management, then what's listed here are the current medications that are approved in Canada for weight loss specifically. So there's orlistat or Xenical, a pill that limits the action of an enzyme called lipase that helps break down fat from a meal. So Xenical is going to block that, thereby reducing fat absorption. The fat basically passes through your bowel movement, so it limits energy from fat getting into your system. There's naltrexone or bupropion, trade name Contrave. It's been out for quite a while. It's a pill that combines a low dose of medication used to manage alcohol or opioid dependency and an antidepressant that's also used for smoking cessation. These medicines work on areas of the brain that are involved in hunger and cravings. And then there's the kind of the newer class of medications called GLP-1 receptor agonists, so trade names Saxenda or Wegovy. These are taken as an injectable pen of a hormone called GLP-1, which is a natural hormone in the body that affects appetite and food intake. So when somebody takes the GLP-1 receptor agonist, this helps the patient lose weight by decreasing their appetite. So then this is just a brief overview. Now, as with all medications, there's benefits and risks, possible side effects with all these things. Coverage varies. Costs for these things can also be high. The medications basically work while you're using them. So weight regain is often going to be the result if you stop these medications, especially if your lifestyle hasn't changed much and you rely solely on the medication to do the work. And these medications can be a good fit for some, absolutely, but they're not for everyone. And you may see ads on TV or social media for other options that could be available in the US, but not currently approved in Canada for weight loss, such as Ozempic or Mounjaro. But the landscape for medications for weight loss is going to be ever changing. Those are likely to get approved in Canada probably pretty quickly. And there's certainly some medication pursuits that are going to allow medication to get into your system via an oral pill versus having to take an injection. So things are subject to change for sure. But if you're interested in any of these medications, please talk to your doctor, nurse practitioner, and/or pharmacist about them. And then there's bariatric surgery. So OHIP covered if eligible. Gastric bypass is the most commonly done in Ontario. And these are permanent changes. They have risks and side effects, just like other things, and they certainly require a lifetime of vitamin, mineral supplements, and dietary changes. Usually there's cutoffs, whether you're eligible or not, that are listed here. Again, if you're interested in these or for more information, you might want to talk to your doctor or nurse practitioner about this option. And in our area, London has a bariatric program now. So that's good because in the past you'd have to travel outside of town to get the procedure done and follow-ups. So with all these different treatment options, how much weight can you realistically expect to lose? And keep off, which is a key feature as well. So if somebody took on lifestyle changes, some of the things we talked about earlier, relative to diet and physical activity and stress and sleep, what's realistic is about a 3 to 5% reduction in where you are now, and that's keeping in mind sustainability for at least 2 years. So 3 to 5 is realistic. So if somebody was starting at 200 pounds with lifestyle, maybe 6 to 10 pounds, you might be realistically expected to keep off for that 2 year mark. Now, lifestyle and medications, like the ones I just mentioned, well, if you to put those two together, you're going to get probably between 5 and 15% of your starting weight as far as loss. Now, with the newer medications that may be coming out, it may be even greater than 15% and actually get closer to bariatric surgery numbers. Time will tell, but there's some indications that newer meds may do even better than the 15% when combined with lifestyle. And then there's lifestyle and surgery, like the bariatric surgery, and you could expect 20 to 30% loss and kept off for 2 years from your starting weight. As you can see from this diagram here, too, that some weight regain is normal and expected in each of these settings, whether it's just lifestyle or lifestyle medications. You got to expect a little bit of bounce back from your lowest. So that's just basically trying to get you some expectation management as to what's possible. Now let's talk about setting goals. So, from reviewing this presentation, and thankfully you're taking part and showing interest, that's great. You may have discovered that with some of the messages that have been provided, that you're doing great with those health behaviors, or they're just not an issue for you, which is awesome. However, you also may have recognized that, well, maybe there's one or two spots that I'm not doing so well that I'd want to take it on as a challenge, or I want it to improve. And if that's the case, then you may want to make a goal around it. Now, if you want a goal to get actualized and achieved, you may want to take a methodical approach to setting that goal. So this is where a SMART goal might come in. So your goal could be a dietary goal. It might be an activity or minimizing sedentary behavior type goal. It might be following up with your healthcare team if trying to improve sleep or seeking mental health supports relative to chronic stress or anxiety might be top of the list for you. Whatever it is, just you want to have a SMART goal. So SMART basically means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So specific means you got to put some detail down and what am I really after? What am I trying to achieve, or what's this goal gonna be? So you got to kind of map that out. And whatever you come up with, it also needs to be measurable. So over time, you have to be able to reflect and go, yes, that happened, or no, that didn't happen. My target didn't happen, my goal didn't happen. Because if you can't measure it, then you don't know if you achieved anything, if you were working towards a goal or not. It also needs to be achievable. So achievable means in your context, does this make sense? Is it something I can really achieve? I would not pick myself, I'm going to run a half marathon this weekend because I don't run that sort of distance. So that's not really achievable uh, for me to start with. And relevant. So relevant, I would suggest means, it needs to be your goal. It's not my goal, Aaron's goal, your doc's goal, partner's goal, pharmacist's goal. It's got to be your goal because you're the one who needs to achieve it and work at it, not us, nobody else. And it's got to be relevant to what you're interested in, right? It may not be the highest priority thing in somebody else's mind, but it's where you want to start. So that's good. And a goal needs to be time bound. So, this week I'm going to achieve this, or this month I'm going to achieve that. You want to have some time frame around your goal, not just whenever, because it might just turn out to be an endless goal that may never get achieved. So you want to be able to set a time to achieve it. Certainly would encourage weight is not a goal. So nobody's goal should be, I want to lose 10 pounds or whatever it is. That is not a goal. Weight is an outcome. What you would want to focus on is what are the health outcomes or health behaviors I might want to uh, work towards to get that outcome. So it's going to be a bunch of likely smaller goals that need to be achieved to realize some sort of outcome. So if you take one thing from today, hit pause, try to work on a SMART goal to achieve towards a positive health behavior change. There should be a resource in the resources provided that will give you some guidance as to how to set a SMART goal and an example. And anytime you set a goal too, again, besides making sure it's your goal, nobody else's goal, if you construct a SMART goal, you want to ask yourself honestly, how realistic, how much confidence do I have that the goal I've constructed for myself in this time frame is going to happen? And your answer to yourself should be, I better rank it at least a 7 out of 10. If I'm looking at a goal and it's only a 3 out of 10 that I have confidence it's going to be achieved, you got to go back and rework your goal because maybe you bit off more than you can chew. Um, So you just want to step over a goal. You don't want to have to hurdle your first goal. You want that early success to get momentum, right? You can always change the goal later. You don't want to set yourself up for failure by choosing too lofty a goal or something that's not realistic. And with that, we're going to talk about our summary and next steps.
So, to recap what we've gone over today, we've spoken about what impacts our weight and the importance of health behaviors to our health. We've also reviewed current medications and surgical options. The bottom line is that the scales do not measure the presence or absence of health, nor do you have to achieve any weight loss to lessen health risks. Reduction of 5 to 10% of your current weight may lessen health risks, but your health is not necessarily determined by the scale. Don't be afraid to explore new or different health behavior changes, but be honest with what works for you and what doesn't. So remember to think long term. Ultimately, you do have to enjoy the changes you've made to have a chance of sustaining it. If you're not enjoying the behavior and diet changes, they won't last. So, where do you go from here? Well, if you enjoy learning in a group setting and you would like something that offers more sessions and support, you may be interested in the Healthy Lifestyle Balance Program, which is currently offered by the East Elgin Family Health Team. And you can take a look at the resource page for more details on how to register for that.
If from today's session you recognize you've been on the dieting bandwagon off and on many times and would like to explore a different approach, you may wish to consider the multi-week intuitive eating program offered by Thames Valley Family Health Team. The details on what the program is about and how to register are on the Thames Valley Family Health Team's programs webpage. If you'd like more personal nutrition support that can be tailored to you, you may wish to pursue a private or consulting dietitian in your community. If you have access to extended health benefits, the cost for such may be covered fully or partially. Otherwise, it may be out of pocket. You could also dial 811 to access a dietitian over the phone or seek a dietitian in your area via the Dietitians of Canada's website. These are detailed in the resource page that goes along with this presentation. If you've identified that poor sleep, poor stress management, or that your weight has been impacted by medications, please follow up with your doctor or nurse practitioner. We wish you all the best on your journey forward. And thanks for watching.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Take care.